Welcome, dear listeners, to the Campfire Cult Podcast. From a camper van deep in the haunted woods, I bring you first-hand accounts of chilling encounters with the paranormal. Step into the night and take a peek into the realm where reality and the supernatural collide. My name is Jazz, and I'll be your host. Tonight, in our debut episode, I'll be taking you back to where it all began, with the first of 3 of my own personal paranormal experiences. Now, bear with me, this takes place back in 1996, the day of my graduation, actually. A little bit about me. So I spent most of my childhood living just outside of Los Angeles, but went to high school in a suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin called Brookfield. Man, talk about a fish out of water experience that was. Moving from the West Coast to the middle of the country. Anyway, so not too far from where I lived, there was a retired quarry that the city turned into a recreation area that became pretty much a favorite spot for all the locals to go fishing and camping, kind of hang out for the day. Just a really good place to kind of just enjoy the outdoors. So like I said, it was graduation night, and some friends and I decided to go camping at that retired quarry for a night of, I don't know, what did kids do back in the 90s? Night of drinking, smoking pot, talking shit, and telling stories around the campfire, pretty much without any regard to what tomorrow brings. So real quick, one thing about me is that I've always enjoyed taking night walks. I think it's mainly because of the anonymity of walking around in the dark at night. It's kind of nice. To be kind of cloaked in shadows. But even more so as an adult, it's a really good opportunity for me to take the dogs for a long walk and listen to some paranormal podcasts. The night really sets the mood. So around midnight, I asked the group if they wanted to take a hike with me along the river. With a little liquid and smoked courage, everyone seemed to be down for the adventure. The hike, if you can call it that, wasn't really difficult. It was basically just a well-maintained footpath along the Fox River. So we were led only by this tiny little orange plastic flashlight that thankfully one of us had lying around in their car. We decided it'd be a good idea, and probably a lot more fun, to turn off the flashlight and make our journey in the dark, and save the flashlight for emergencies, or, to roll a joint halfway through the hike. About a half mile down the path, we stopped to roll said joint, and all of a sudden we started to hear what I can only describe as the sound of maybe like a 600-pound grown man jumping from about 20 or 30 feet off a cliff, doing a belly flop into the water. We heard it over and over and over again while we were sitting around kind of stoned trying to roll this joint in the dark. The one and only hunter in our group was certain it was a deer. But unless that deer was doing belly flops into the water, there is no way it was a deer. Or a bear, for that matter. If anything, a bear would be super stealthy and, not want to scare off its prey. So, no deer, no bear. The ground itself was level to the river. There was no cliff or anything that, boulders could fall and roll into the water from. So that was ruled out as well. And basically just youth and logic dictated that we just didn't care all that much about it. yeah, it was cool to hear. It was an exciting event while we're, on the on the side of the trail trying to roll a joint in the dark, but nothing more than that. So once we were done rolling the joint, we embarked on, I think maybe the last mile loop of this little riverside trail. About 5 minutes further down the path, as we were, just kind of recalling the event, my friend John, the true believer of the group at the time and avid X-File enthusiast, he was busy discussing, theories as to what could have been occurring, be cryptid, Bigfoot. At the time, there was no talk of Dogman or anything like that, although Land and Quarry, the quarry that we were staying at, isn't very far away from where the Beast at Bray Road took place.
That thing, that was no dog. That was too big to be a dog. That thing was bigger than me.
That thing was stalking cornfields, jumping on cars, and feasting on roadkill. For 2 years, people in Elkhorn, Wisconsin whispered about a king-sized creature who roamed Bray Road.
It had really big claws. It was holding its roadkill like it had elbows, and it was kneeling on 2 knees, like a human being might do.
Anyway, so as we were, continuing our little hike along the path, all of a sudden there was a big flash of light, incredibly bright, that kind of held for about 3 to 5 seconds. I don't know, it seemed forever, but it could have only been about 5 seconds at the most. And then, just as quickly as it came, it disappeared. The true believer in our group was busy berating himself for not checking the time on his watch before the flash occurred. How he would have known that the flash was going to occur so he could check his watch beforehand is beyond me. So that was happening. There's several things that stood out to us. The sky was devoid of clouds. There was no helicopters in sight. It was a moonless, actually very starry night from what I can recall, and no airplanes flying by, and drones had not been invented to my knowledge just yet. I mean, this is pre-cell. I guess it's the dawn of cell phones. Definitely pre-drone. So I know what you might be thinking. We were all smoking pot, drinking a little bit. So the story's a little suspect. I get it, and I would understand the skepticism if we all hadn't experienced it at the same time. And some of us were sober. So it was definitely, if it was a hallucination, it was a shared hallucination. But anyway, in the aftermath, I kind of started to take deep dives into various types of lightning, so ball or heat lightning, and even the government's favorite cause for some of this phenomenon being swamp gas.
I gave what I thought to be at that time the only scientific explanation possible for the faint lights in the swampy area. I made the statement that it could be swamp gas, and even though I went on to emphasize that I couldn't prove it in a court of law, that was the full explanation for these sightings.
None of these explanations truly accounted for what we had seen. So to this day, I really have no idea what it could have been. Part of me wants to believe that the splashes in the river and the flash of light somehow are connected in some way, whether it be, okay, let's dip into the world of the weird. Let's say it was a Sasquatch or Dogman clomping through the water. And then the flash of light was a portal opening and them being, jumping into whatever dimension they're coming from. That could very well be. Could also be heat lightning. Who knows? But it's interesting to think about. And what's kind of odd is that none of us, from what I can recall, ever really talked about it after that night. It was just something that happened, and occasionally I'll think about it. I don't know, it's just one of those strange life events. I almost forgot. One really, really interesting fact about this is that during that very bright flash of light, even though our eyes were completely used to being in the dark and actually seeing quite well in the dark, none of us experienced the usual reflex of squinting our eyes in pain as if somebody, had suddenly switched on the light while you were asleep in a completely dark room. It was quite the opposite, actually. In fact, most of us distinctly remember being able to see everything around us in unbelievable detail. The environment around us pretty much imprinted on our collective memory, it seems like. To this day, except for high-definition photographs, I've never seen anything as intricate in detail as the leaves, tree bark, and tall grass that surrounded us that night. It was just pretty amazing, actually. So that is my first paranormal experience, or hopefully a paranormal experience. Again, I'm realistic enough to know that it could just be ball lightning or whatever it was, but it was pretty cool. It started me down the path of being completely obsessed by the paranormal, and I don't know, it makes for a fun story. Honestly, I'd rather live in a world where these things could possibly exist than in a world where they don't. I'd rather live in a world of possibility. Something as sterile as, you're born, you live, and you die. That's so fucking boring to me. And I don't know. I'd rather believe in Bigfoot. Well, folks, it looks like that's about it for tonight. And please join me next week for part 2 of 3 of the genesis of, you know what, let's just call it an obsession. Lifelong obsession. And again, if you like what you're hearing, please follow, rate, and review. That'll help us out a lot. And if you have a story to tell, feel free to reach me at contact@campfirecultpod.com. You can find us all over the place at any of our socials at Campfire Cult Pod and online at campfirecultpod.com.